Hello, everybody. Good morning. Just allow folks to join in and get settled. Happy Wednesday, and I hope everybody's doing well today. And thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to today's workshop on when and how to pivot your startup. My name is Amangela McKelvey Tate, and I am the program coordinator here at the Innovation Cluster. And we're so excited to have you all with us today. So, for those who may be new to us, the Innovation Cluster is an innovation hub based in Peterborough and the Kawarthas. And we help entrepreneurs grow and scale with purpose through mentorship, community, and programs built for real world impact. We really appreciate you choosing to be with us today as a part of your journey. Now, on to today's incredible presenter, Henrique Diaz. Henrique is currently running his third startup, Bud Trainer, a cannabis gardening brand available at over 200 retailers across North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Henrique has also consulted and coached over 100 startups and businesses in various industries over the last 10 years, helping them generate millions of dollars. In today's workshop, we'll help you to recognize when it's time to pivot, how to do it without losing momentum, and how to test new directions quickly before burning more time and cash. We'll go through real world examples of successful pivots, identify common blind spots that delay tough decisions, and teach a framework to evaluate whether your startup should double down, adjust, or completely change direction. So, just a few quick things before we dive in. We will be watching the chat throughout the session. So, if you've got questions, drop them in and I'll make sure they get to the facilitators. Feel free to turn your cameras on. We love to see your faces. And at the end of the workshop, we'll be running a quick poll to hear about your experience. So, please stick around and share your feedback. It's greatly appreciated and helps us improve future sessions. And most importantly, please don't be shy. It's a space for you to ask questions, swap ideas, and learn something you can actually use when the Zoom call ends today. Okay, let's get started. Thank you so much, Henrique. It's all yours.
Thank you, Magella. Hello, everyone. I actually recognize a few familiar faces here. Hi, Miriam. It's been a while, but we spoke maybe a couple of years ago. And hi, Mario. I can see you there too. And as Magella said there, guys, let's turn our cameras on. Hi, Alroy. It's a lot better. I have everybody here on the top of my screen, so it's a lot better look at moving faces than just pictures or black screens. We're going to go through this presentation here today a little bit quickly. If you've seen one of my presentations, I like to run through the content quickly. And if you have questions, though, you put your hand up. There's a little button that you can put your hand up, and then you can interrupt me at any time to ask questions at the end of the slides. And I'll be giving you guys a few chances to ask questions throughout the presentation as well. But at the very end, I'm saving some time for us to hopefully go through some more questions, things that are more applicable to your startup at this stage. I'm going to go off the assumption that you are here because you want your startup to succeed. We all do, right? We're looking for product market fit, which means the market is now pulling your product more than you're having to push it and shove it into the market. It's a nice stage to get with your company, so you don't have to put so much effort anymore. We want to get to predictable revenue, something we can call MRR, monthly recurring revenue, or ARR, annual recurring revenue. And for us to be able to call them that, it has to be predictable. We want customers coming back to us, giving us reviews without us having to go after them. And the reason for that is because they're really pleased with what we're providing them. We want to create momentum. Again, to be able to get to predictable revenue, we need momentum. We can't be facing resistance all the time because that's going to keep our revenue pretty choppy. We want a business that feels like it's working. And what does that mean? It means you wake up and you're looking forward to what you're doing next, not waking up and thinking, how am I going to make this survive today? And lastly, we're all trying to win here. However, there is something off. The reason why you're here today, talking about how to pivot your startup, is because something might need to change, right? So maybe growth is slower than what you wanted it to be. Perhaps you have made a few sales, but there's just a lot of friction there. It's harder to get to the end with your customer. When you're getting traction, it feels like there's too much force, too much following up that you have to do, too much convincing until people actually decide to buy from you, which means you're pushing too much. And the market is not pulling. Again, back to product market fit. If you're pushing too much and the market is not pulling, there is no product market fit yet. Even my company, I can hardly say there's too much product market fit because we still have to push a lot, even though we're past $1.5 million in sales. So product market fit only comes when you can really feel that boulder that you've been pushing up the mountain start rolling off on the other side. Now, with all of this said, what do we do, right? Do you double down on one of the strategies that you have right now? Do you really pivot? Do you change the messaging that you currently have? Do you pivot in that direction? Do you lower the price or increase the price? What do you do about your pricing, right? Do you let someone go, or an agency go, or a service or a SaaS that you're using go, and replace it by something else? Do you have to start from scratch? Is it one of those pivots where you pretty much just have to shut it down and start again? Ultimately, you need a pivot, right? You're not sure what you do. You just know that something needs to change so that you get to see those results that you're looking for. Before we get into the presentation today, really quickly about me, and Majella already went through this, so I'm going to go through it quickly here. I am actually a mechanical engineer, graduated from the University of Waterloo in 2014. I actually still live in the area to this date. My first startup was right out of university. We were developing this wearable tech for people, athletes, to prevent their injuries. The idea was, with this device that they wore, we were going to tell them when they were doing movements that were going to lead into an injury in the future. However, we didn't realize that athletes didn't care about injury prevention. They only cared about injury treatment. And we had a very expensive solution, and all they cared about was maybe a foam roller and some stretches. So that was our fault for not interviewing customers early enough and just developing cool technology, because we're all tech people and we wanted to build something. Then I had a second startup a couple of years after that. We were making cannabis accessories. Canada had already announced plans to legalize marijuana, and we thought it would be a good idea to get a head start. We actually got a lot farther than the first startup. We got to sell a number of products online and through retailers. However, the business model never worked out that we could manufacture with the cost that we needed in order to sell at a profit. Sales and marketing was very difficult in the cannabis space because it's very restricted, and we ended up basically running out of money after a year. It was a much better experience than the first time because we actually got to do some business. However, we had to park that. And after that, I needed to make money for myself. So I started working kind of like as a consultant slash coach to startups around the area here that needed to sell their product. They were typically engineers, technical people who didn't know how to sell. And I already had gained the experience from my first couple of startups. So I did that for the best part of 3 years until I started Bud Trainer, which is my startup currently, where we make gardening products for people who want to grow top shelf cannabis at home. Our products are the best quality in the market. We also teach people how to grow cannabis with a very simple 7-step process that anybody can use to get their first yield and their first harvest. The brand today, we're doing over 1,000 sales per month across US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe, which is our most recent win there this year. 85% of our reviews are 5 stars. We have Amazon's Choice badge on all of our products, and we've raised an investment over $150,000 to date. And the topic of today, we have pivoted many times in the past. I'm actually going to go through some of these times here today to exemplify what we're going to be covering. And we're actually going through a pivot right now as well that you guys will get to hear about. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about what is pivoting. Okay, when not to pivot. And if you realize that you're in this category of when not to pivot, no hard feelings if you want to leave and go make use of your time toward your not pivoting. When to pivot, and there are 6 scenarios we're going to cover here. When the problem's not aligned, when the solution's not aligned, when your ideal customer profile is not aligned, when your sales strategy is not aligned, when the channel you choose to sell in is not aligned, and when the pricing is not aligned. And this is kind of like, you could think of it as a pyramid where the problem is the biggest here. If you're not aligned on the problem, you have no business. Then comes the solution. The solution, you can have multiple solutions to the same problem. Then you align on the solution. Now you need to find the ideal customer. Then after you find the ideal customer, you need to find the sales strategy. After that, the channel and the pricing. You could say sales and channel could be intertwined, but this is the idea here. Okay, we're going from the order of essentiality. If you have a pricing problem, that's the best one to have, because that one is easy to solve, right? There's not much that you have to do there. But if you have a problem, then you're going to have to pivot hard on your startup. Okay, and then we're just going to wrap up talking about why pivoting is actually equal to success. So before further ado, any questions here? Anything before we get started? Excellent. Cool. Pace is good. Awesome. All right, what is pivoting? So pivoting is basically adjusting your path, okay? You set out in this direction and you thought it was the right direction, and then eventually some evidence comes up and you realize that, in this road, if you're driving now, there's a curve. And if you keep driving the way you were going, you're literally going to fall off the precipice. So you better turn, right? And then you turn, and then you go through the curve, and then you find out that the curve is not going to be turning forever. So eventually you have to straighten it out. That's another little pivot. So then you start going straight again. And then you start going straight and you catch like 100 kilometers per hour. And now all of a sudden there's another curve that comes. Now you have to slow down and you have to turn again. Otherwise, you're going to crash, right? So the idea about pivots here, guys, is not one of those things where like, oh, we're pivoting our startup and then just making this huge change. Those are bad pivots, okay? If you're making this huge pivot, it means that there were so many things wrong in the first place, okay? A pivot should be a small adjustment, a strategic adjustment. That's why we need to start with a really good problem and then create a solution to that problem, and so on and so forth, right? So you can look at pivoting as this strategic adjustment that we're doing based on the path that we're following, okay? Now, this is not a full restart. Again, there are those pivots. You might as well just consider that you shut the company down and started a new one. So it's not time to panic. It's not something that is driven by like, oh, we just feel like this is going to be better for the company. It's something that is very logical, okay? It's changing an assumption that you had, something that you believed was true. You learned with evidence that it's not, and then you changed your business after you learned that, right? In fact, no entrepreneur that is successful out there, the big ones, got there by having this one assumption that they made in the beginning, and they were right all the way along. Okay, the Elon Musks of the world, they make a lot of assumptions so that they can be wrong very fast, so that they can adjust it very fast, and they make a lot of other assumptions, so they iterate on this all the time. So they're making micro pivots all the time, versus again realizing that you're now going to hit a wall and you don't have time to pivot, and that really crashes the business, right? Looking at my second startup, had we done some pivots earlier on, because we did get to sell a number of products, we could have probably survived longer or survived to today, like go figure, right? But we didn't. And then we crashed into a wall, didn't have enough money, had to shut the business down. You keep the mission, okay, what you set out to do, you just adjust the approach. So again, your North Star remains the same. The destination remains the same, but you just might have to adjust the course that you're going there. And it's again, look at it not as a collapse, not as a failure, but more so as I was right up until now. Now I need to change my decision, right? And it doesn't mean you are wrong. It just the universe changes, the world changes. Now you need to change direction as well. Okay. Now, when do you not pivot? And this is one, again, if you find yourself in this here, then it's not worth it. Okay. I've wanted to pivot multiple times where we should have just stuck to our strategy, and then we didn't. And then we did something different. And then looking back 12 months later, I'm like, oh, maybe if we just stuck to what we were doing, we would have done better. Shouldn't have pivoted. So if you're in one of these cases, then it might be better to just stick it out. And it comes down to mainly when you haven't executed your strategy 100% yet. Okay. So you've just kind of tested the waters. You just dipped your toes. If your marketing is still not consistently performing, if your sales process is weak and you haven't optimized that, if you have no follow up, it might not be the reason why the market doesn't want the product, or the problem is wrong, or whatever. It's because you haven't tried hard enough. Okay, so before you move on to another field, you have to turn every stone of where you are. Then you can say, okay, this is really not working, we have to move on to the next one. So if you're here right now thinking like, yeah, maybe we just didn't try hard enough, and for you to think that way, just think of a competitor that you might have, someone who might not be as smart as you but is harder working. Would that person have done more than you? Okay, because a lot of times it's yes, and it means you just have to do more of that grunt work. When you don't have enough data, which is a consequence of the first one, really. So if you just got rejected a few times, you haven't really honed your process yet, you're just getting these feelings that really suck when you get rejected, right? But like, you have to get rejected enough times to realize what's the ratio of rejections to yeses. If you talk to 100 people and 100 people reject you, that's a sign. If you talk to 10 people and 10 people reject you, well, maybe, you could try with another 10 and see if that's really going to be the case. And it all comes down to discomfort and our ego, right? So early traction is always going to be a little crazy. But because you have to do the hard work, it doesn't mean it's the wrong work. Sometimes you have to learn a new skill to be able to do that, right? So just think to yourself, is it the business that you created, which is separate from you, or is it you? that's the problem that needs to pivot here. Because if it's you who needs to pivot, then it's just a mental process that you have to work on. And again, let's always think about pivoting it because of evidence, not because we feel like it. Even with Butt Trainer, we've pivoted because we felt like, this other strategy was going to be easier and we're going to be able to scale better. But really, it was just me potentially being lazy and not wanting to do the grunt work, the repetitive stuff, because I always like to chase new stuff, right? So again, pivoting should not feel good initially. It should feel like you made a bit of a wrong decision. It sucks, but it's necessary, okay? And then you overcome that. But if you're pivoting now just because you want to feel more comfortable, then that's a different story, okay? You have to pivot because you really have to. So when to pivot. Now, looking on the other side, there's a few scenarios here where it is advisable to pivot. One, when the problem that you're trying to solve is not as big as you thought it was going to be. It might be a big problem for you, but you might be one in a million, right? You have to solve a problem that's big to more than one in a million people. The solution that you created doesn't necessarily solve the pain point as you thought it would, right? Like, say you're promising, oh, you're going to increase your productivity if you use my app. And then all of a sudden I'm using your app and I'm not increasing my productivity. So it's not solving the pain point, right? It's a solution problem. Customer segments that you chose. So let's assume that you did have the right problem and the right solution. Now you chose the wrong customer segment. Maybe your solution, maybe you're selling cell phones and you're trying to sell into retirement homes. Well, elderly people are not likely to buy brand new cell phones as much as people between 19 and 25 years old going to university, right? So you might have to just hit your right customer segment. Sales and marketing strategy is not generating revenue. That's another way or reason why you have to pivot. So if you have the right customer segment, you already have a few wins, okay? The problem and solution are validated, but now the sales and marketing strategy that you have is just not scaling, not growing, right? So what needs to change here? It's potentially your strategy there. Or you did do that right, but you just chose the wrong channel to sell to your customers. Maybe you should have gone direct to consumer and you went through a distributor, or maybe you went through a third party, or maybe you went through another type of business that you shouldn't have gone through, right? So the channel that you chose is not correct. And lastly, if all of those are correct, then it's likely that your pricing is not on point. The customer might be thinking they're paying too much for how much value they're getting, and they're not paying for it, right? So if you lower your cost, you might get more customers, but then is the business viable? So these are the main reasons here. Not to say that there's not more reasons why you need to pivot, but these are ones that most startups find themselves in, and that you're probably finding yourself in right now. Any scenarios here actually that we're not covering that you guys might be finding yourselves in? No? Great. If there are,
Henrik,
yeah,
good
please.
morning, everybody, and thank you so much. This is very, very essential for me because I started my business around 2, 3 years ago, and I was working in the same industry for over 24 years. And in corporate level, actually, everything was good. Everybody was promising, even when I started business, it will go well. But then when I started business, sales became a nightmare. People were not responding. People were not interested. Everybody wanted to hire again as employee and implement everything, all the methodologies we were discussing. And so I'm a consultant. I'm trying actually also to develop a few analytical agentic solutions too. I'm at the moment actually that I'm not sure exactly what is the issue. I broke down the prices. I went through multiple actually connections, networking. That's the normal way actually to work in my industry. Did my advertisements and wrote a lot of articles on WhatsApp. Still, it's extremely slow and it's not even paying bills. I'm not talking about growing the business after 2, 3 years. So I'm at the moment that seriously thinking about what's the problem and shall I just pivot? So
Well, let's see if you find yourself into one of these categories here today. We can revisit your case later on because yes, there is a time where there is no pivoting. You just have to stop the business and start something new, right? Because again, it's number one here. The problem is not as big as anticipated, and you're putting all of this effort, you're doing all of these things as you mentioned, and you're not getting anywhere, right? So typically, when you start with a good value proposition, you don't even have to do too much to get customers. They come to you because they really want that, right? So let's have a look at these here, and you can tell us later, Elham, if this is your case here. How does that sound?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so number one, the problem is not as big as you anticipated it to be. When the customers, they're aware of the problem, okay, they know that they have the problem, but they're just not looking for a solution. We ourselves have many problems, right? Like we live with problems all day, every day. We just have maybe 5 that we're focusing on solving because we can't solve all problems all at once. That takes too much money, it takes too much time. You might have a squeak on your floor. You know the problem's there, but you don't have $5,000 to replace the whole flooring or 10,000. So you're just living with this squeak, right? So if the problem you're solving is one of those where the customer is aware of it, and once they become aware of it, they're not really looking for solutions, then that's a reason to pivot. That's a reason to look for something different in that problem that is going to make them take action. They need to be looking, they need to be willing to put their money down for a solution for it to be viable. So how do we deal with that? We re-interview customers about the real consequences. This was actually one of the cases we're going to see here with my first startup. You redefine the core promise around what is actually measurable pain. So if you're solving a problem, the squeak is not bad enough. So we have to interview customers who have that squeak now and get to understand, like, how do they live with that problem? Is it something that they just completely erased off their mind and the floor squeaks, they don't even hear that anymore? Or is that something that just keeps nagging them over and over again? You have to be able to be measurable pain. If there's no pain, the problem is not a problem. It's a problem when it becomes painful, right? And focusing the product on what's most expensive to the user, on what is the reason why that is really bad. You might find out that the squeak on the floor actually hurts someone because they have guests over all the time and they feel embarrassed when the guests are over, right? So it's like, oh, you don't want to have squeaky floors because you don't want your guests to think less of you, right? So that would be your message versus, hey, squeaky floors bother you, because it doesn't. Maybe it just bothers them because it bothers other people, right? So with my first startup, this was very much the case because we wanted to solve injuries, okay? And injuries cost billions of dollars. And we're like, oh my God, it's a huge problem. We have to solve this problem. Billions of dollars with athletes. They lose all of this time. They have to be away for a whole year because, you know, they tore their ACL or hurt their elbow with something that they could have just strengthened before. We could have told them, hey, if you work on this, you're going to get stronger there. You're not going to have an injury. But you have to wear this device and you have to do all of this extra stuff. And they were like, yeah, I get it. You know, it would be nice to not have injuries, but I'm not willing to put the time into that. You know, I'll just have the injury. I'm stronger. It's not going to happen to me. So we learned that they were aware of the problem. They just weren't looking for this injury prevention solution. They were just like, I'll just go to the hospital if I tear my ACL later on. So we re-interviewed customers. We realized that athletes weren't really where we should be focusing. We pivoted toward hospitals and fighting departments and police departments because those people have tons of low back pain, we learned, which was one specific injury. And they really cared about it because it's 40 hours a week that they're suffering from that low back pain. Therefore, wearing a device and telling them how to strengthen their back was something they were more willing to do. However, it was a little bit too late and we still didn't find product market fit within that world because it was an expensive solution. Those people had busy schedules and we wanted to find out they didn't have time for that either, right? So it's a startup that failed because the problem was not as big as anticipated. However, what you're doing right now might not be the case where people just don't care about injuries at all. Maybe it's just that the problem that you're solving is not one that is top of mind. So you have to find something deeper, something that is going to make people more bothered. Okay. If they're not that bothered, they're not going to spend money solving it. You have to be really bothered about that squeak on your floor to be able to go and solve it. Number 2, the solution is not solving the pain point as you promised, right? So it's easy to sell bread and say that it's going to satisfy your hunger. That's pretty obvious, right? You eat the bread, you're not hungry anymore. However, our solutions are not as simple as bread and hunger most of the times, right? So what's happening here is you might be making sales because you're a really good marketer, and then retention drops. People don't buy again, people leave, people just decide to cancel their account. So usage of the product is really shallow because they realize that, you know, what they were buying doesn't really help. Like, again, oh, if you use my app, you're going to increase your productivity by 30%. And then I download the app and I have to spend 2 hours a day putting stuff into the app to increase my productivity. And then my productivity doesn't increase. So I'm not going to use that app again, right? The problem here is not that I don't want to be more productive. I'm already a customer. I want to be more productive, but your solution is not giving me that, right? So how do we deal with this? One, we keep the problem constant. We have to assume that that's right because I'm coming back. I'm already a customer. I'm just not being retained. And then you have to redesign how you give me that solution. Okay. Why am I not hitting those goals? Maybe the questions you're asking me are wrong. Maybe the solutions or the suggestions you're giving me to increase my productivity are wrong. And then you have to do a little bit of, put your lab coat on, become a scientist, and go find out about the problem, and so that you can learn how your solution can apply a little bit better. So being here is better than being a number one where the problem was wrong. Like when we started, we assumed injuries in athletes. That was a wrong problem in the first place, but the technology itself could solve the same problem or a different problem for another category. So we changed that, right? And changed the solution, changed everything. But had we found out that athletes did want that injury prevention solution, but just not the way that we were delivering it, we could have done it differently. We just figured out they didn't want anything, right? But it might be your case. They have a software as a service, for example. You're getting customers who are canceling their accounts, but why is it? So what are you promising, number one? And what are they getting, number two? Because if they're not getting what you're promising, and even more than that, it's going to be hard to keep them around. So you keep the problem constant, redesign the delivery, then you solve the main problem that you're promising completely. Because a lot of companies, what they do is they say they're solving a problem, and then they just build a bunch of other stuff around that problem. They don't solve it 100%. They just solve it okay, but they think that adding some extra stuff around it is going to make it good enough, right? Sometimes it's better to just be simple and robust. You do what you promise, no fluff, no fanciness around it, no extra features, just straight up what you're promising. So you're creating a simple, robust solution, no gimmicks to it. Okay. Sometimes it's just about simplifying it. Maybe your productivity app is just asking me to do too many inputs. Just ask me for the 3 main inputs. Maybe that's what you need to focus on. Those 3 main inputs that give 80% of the results, and then let's go from there, right? So you simplify in order to focus. For example, SaaS companies do this all the time, right? So you're building a new feature. A new feature solves a new problem. Will that contribute to the main problem that you're solving? Will that distract the user? Will that actually create more friction versus less friction? So it's one of those where sometimes if you have 10 features in your app and you're trying to launch, well, that's because you have 9 too many, and you should just launch with the one main feature so that people get to know you for what you're best at, and then you can add the extra stuff, okay? So, and actually, when I think about Bud Trainer, my current business, we have one of the products is a hero product, but we've always been trying to sell all of the other products the same. And it wasn't until recently that we realized that if we tried to sell the other products, we wouldn't sell as much. So we should really focus on simplifying it, selling the one core product. After people buy it, they're happy with it, they write us a good review, then we can upsell the other products. Same thing with a SaaS business trying to sell their other features. If what you do is a CRM, but you can also do financial analysis, don't try to sell that because it's going to take away from your CRM capabilities. If you sell CRM, I want to know that you're good at sales and marketing. Okay, then I buy your CRM. Then when I'm a customer, you tell me that you have this financial capability that you can also do, because then I'm like, okay, now I'm in the market for that too. But too often startups try to add too many solutions to solve a problem that's not even the main problem anymore, right? So don't fall into that pit. And if that's the pit you're in, this is how you solve it. Focus, simplify. 3, so assuming your problem is right and your solution is right, but you just chose the wrong customer segment. Again, if you're trying to sell cell phones or technology into retirement homes, it's going to be to the people who live in the retirement homes, it's going to be difficult to get customers versus selling to people who are more technology prone, right? So what if you chose the wrong customer segment? How do you know that? Well, the target segment that you chose is not converting. You're reaching out 100 calls, you know the problem and the solution are right because some people already bit and they're already happy with it, but the customer segment you're trying to reach is not working, right? You're calling, not converting, and you're like, why do I have some customers but these customers don't want it? Maybe it's just because you're hitting the wrong pool of customers. If there's already customers that are happy, that means there are more customers like those out there. You just have to find them. Maybe you're just in the wrong pond fishing for the wrong type of fish, right? So how do we deal with this when we know the problem solution are aligned and we have validation for that? First, we do more market research. ChatGPT is great for this these days. So the first market you assumed was wrong. Okay, wrong assumption. We need to, again, change the direction of the steering wheel. What is the next one that's most likely to buy from us? So then you think, okay, out of everybody, let's say there's millions of people that could buy my product. Who are the smallest group that has the biggest problem here that I can solve, right? So if you're solving joint pain and you want to, and the market that you chose is not working because maybe you chose athletes between 25 and 35 years old who are all in good shape. Well, if you're solving joint pain, maybe you want to do more research and you're going to find out that you should be focused on people between 55 and 75 years old. Okay. So that's how you change your ideal customer profile. You start with one, you're wrong about that, not selling enough. Okay, let's take a step back. Let's look at the whole market here. There's millions of people, but who are the few that are just like in real pain about this? Because it's going to be easier to sell to them because they're in real pain, right? And then that gives you more focus to go after them as well. You then identify the highest lifetime value customer and the fastest conversion buyers within that. That's how you're going to test your new customer profile. And then once you find that, this new pond that you went to fish is now biting, you change your messaging, you change your proof around that market, and you change the pipeline around them, right? Because you're a different type of customer. So that's what you learn and that's what you do. You assume you're right, you're not. You go to the next one. You assume you're right. You identify the best customers there, the fastest conversion to them, you rebuild everything. Okay, it'll work, it worked, and then you succeed. You can move on to the next step. However, if it didn't, you do it again. So the nice thing about the customer segment is that you can always go for another customer segment. Okay, people who have a bigger need. You might just be wrong the first time around. An example was Bud Trainers, my own company's go-to-market strategy in the first year in 2021. We got 3 main gardening products to sell, which were these fabric pots. So it's just a pot made of fabric. They're called grow bags as well. These garden wires that you could use to tie branches to it, and these little plastic clips. We made a website. We put all the products up there. It was on Shopify. And we started off without any traffic, and we couldn't do ads because it was cannabis related. So a month later, no sales come through the website, and I'm like, what do we do with these products? It was all literally in my house. So I decided to look for another customer segment that was interested. It wasn't so much online, but it was actually retailers that wanted to sell our product. So then we went after retailers. They saw the product, they picked it up, they really liked the quality, they bought from us. So they started buying, and every 2 retailers we visited, 1 wanted to buy the product. So it was a really good ratio. So we changed right away our customer segment, it was still a business to consumer. Like our final customer was still the same. We just changed the approach that we were selling to them by going to a different customer in between, which was giving us the full money, which were these retailers. They just needed a margin on top of that. So we rebuilt it all, went after that, and we got to over 150 retailers in less than a year, which was a really good change in strategy. So if the customer segment you're choosing or you're trying to sell to is not working, you might just have to change it. Now, let's assume that you did get the right customer segment. You have a few sales from that customer segment, and they're writing you good reviews, which means the problem is right, the solution is right, the customers in that segment are right because they're writing you good reviews, but the sales and marketing is just not generating revenue. It's really hard to scale. You try to put money on ads, and then your sales come down after that, or not come down. They don't go up proportionally. You try to scale here or invest in certain marketing activities, and it's just not growing, right? Your ROI, your marketing ROI is not getting there. So this happens when you're not creating either brand awareness, which is top funnel, or you're not converting your leads. Okay, sales and marketing is meant to help you with that conversion. So you could either be making bad advertisement and bad content at the top, or maybe your conversion engine is just not so good. So what do we do here? First, we re-clarify who our ideal customer position or our customer profile is, as we did with the last step. And then we sharpen the positioning that we have here, because maybe we have this customer profile. We're just not speaking their language, okay? We're just still speaking the language of selling to everybody. Meanwhile, there's all of these people here buying from us, right? So we re-clarify, okay, who is really buying from us? It's these people. Let's position ourselves more for them so they feel even more special and so that we get more people like them, right? So then you rewrite the offer around that pain that they have, kind of almost ignoring the other market segments that you could sell to, so that again, that market feels special. Then you rewrite the offer around the pain, the outcome, and the urgency of that, right? That people need to do to solve their pain. and you test the new angles and channels, and also hooks, as in marketing hooks with A/B tests. So if your sales and marketing is not working, that's a good problem to have. You just have to change sales and marketing strategies, and you can test that. Okay, who are you selling to? Okay, clarify that. What is their real pain point? Okay, clarify that, and the benefit to them. Because again, selling a cell phone to a retiree is different than selling a cell phone to someone who is in the middle of their career, right? So what is their pain point, the outcome that they're going to get from that device, from that product, and the urgency, why they need it now. Then you just test that new strategy. If it doesn't work, you go back to number one again, reclarify the ICP, rewrite the offer around the pain, and so on. So with Bud Trainer, we've been doing this a number of times over the years, and we're actually doing it again now, where we are putting everything, the sales and marketing efforts, around this one hero product that we have. So instead of people coming in and being fed the whole Bud Trainer process and the whole Bud Trainer suite of products, we're like, no, our main product is this one product here. It's super easy to use, takes 2 minutes. It's our best seller. Get started on it. And then when people get to there, we're going to have an upsell strategy. So we're just changing how we acquire the customer. We're changing the words on our website. Literally, we're changing the words on our advertising. Literally, we're not changing the product at all. We're not touching that. We're not touching how we distribute it. We're not touching anything. It's just the sales and marketing strategy that's changing. Because again, we got this feeling that if we do this, we're going to get more sales. And when we look at our data, the data is telling us that 75% of our money comes from one product. So you should rebrand around that one product, and the other products come as a consequence. Okay, so it's basically acting on data that when we saw the data, it was just kind of like a slap on the face. It was obvious what we needed to do. So that's the current pivot we're doing now. And I feel bad because I'm like, shit, we were wrong for a long time. You know, we should have done this a long time ago. So that's the feeling you should have when you're doing a pivot. It's like, oh my God, should have done this yesterday. That's a good pivot. It's a pivot in the right direction. Okay. And if we're wrong about this, no problem. We're going to pivot again in the future until we're in the right direction. Every year we've tried a different sales and marketing approach. So far, it hasn't worked to the point where the ball has still, or the rock has tipped over the other side of the mountain. We're still pushing uphill when it comes to sales and marketing. We want to be able for that boulder to go downhill. That's what we're trying to do here. Okay. All right, now we have problem and solution figured out, customer segments figured out, our sales and marketing strategies figured out. Maybe we're just not selling through the right channel. This is a little bit of our Bud Trainer problem in the beginning as well. You could say that we had a channel problem. We tried to sell online, that didn't work. We tried to sell to retailers, that worked, right? So when your cost per acquisition is really high and you're not closing, that means you probably, and you know that you have customers, you have the right problem, the right solution, the right sales and marketing strategy. It just means that you might be selling to the wrong channel, to the wrong medium that gets to your customer. So what do? First, look at all the channels you have, and then you double down on the best one, okay? The one that gives you, or that you feel is going to be the best one, because sometimes having too many and focusing on too many doesn't lend you any. And then you're going to align the experience of the product to the sales strategy that you're going to create for that channel. Because again, you're looking at all of your options and you're choosing the one to double down on. And then you're going to cut all of the ones that are not doing well and wasting your time very quickly so you can focus on the ones that are. Okay. So if you're trying to sell on your e-commerce store, or if you're trying to sell on Amazon, it's not working, maybe you can try e-commerce. And if that's not working, maybe you can try to go directly to retailers. If that's not working, you can try to go directly to distributors, right? And if none of those are working, that means maybe you have another problem, which is not a channel problem. It might be a sales and marketing problem. It might be a customer profile problem. It might be a solution or a problem, right? So if it's the channel, you have a good problem in your hands here. This is easy to solve, an easy pivot. An example was Bud Trainer. When we started off, like I said, we started off e-commerce. That didn't work. We went to retailers. That worked really well, but then it stopped working too, because in 2020, a lot of people were gardening, and we kind of rode that wave at the very end. And then sales just started going down. Retailers started going out of business. And we're like, oh my God, we thought we were just going to keep growing this way. All these retailers that we kept selling to were going to keep increasing, but we kind of stalled at the retailers. And at the same time, we had just started our Amazon store because one of our co-founders knows Amazon, and we're like, I might as well just put the products there. Let's see what happens. We're probably not going to get accepted because we were cannabis related, but let's see. We didn't put any cannabis, terms on Amazon. We stayed cannabis clean there. but they let us sell our products. And then eventually they started selling more of our products, and then they passed e-commerce, and then they kept growing. And then eventually they passed the retailers. Today, 75% of our revenue comes from Amazon. Okay. So the thing here is, if the channel you're trying to sell in is not working, there are many other channels. Go try those other channels. When you find one that works and you get a few bites, capitalize on it. Stay on that channel. Meanwhile, go opening other channels as well to see if it works. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, you close that channel down. Right now, we're putting our products on Walmart.com. Walmart.com is trying to compete with Amazon directly. So we're not selling it in the Walmart's shelves. We're literally just adding our products to Walmart like we do to Amazon. It's a self-service process. Is it going to sell on Walmart.com? We have no idea. Okay. But it's now time to start a new channel. And because the channel just came to us, we figured let's try it again, or might as well try for the first time. So if Walmart works for us, great. It's going to be another Amazon. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's going to bring $2,000 of sales a month. We don't know. But the fact is, we want to grow. We want to, again, get to that product market fit. Our channels that we have right now are working. We want to open up more channels, right? So once you get that channel that works, start looking for other ones. But don't put your effort split between all of these channels, because you're not going to do well in any of them. Okay. Then we have revenue model, pricing being incorrect. So maybe all of those top 5 that we discussed: problem, solution, customer profile, sales or marketing, and your channel is correct. Now revenue model, right? So maybe your pricing is just not right. People are happy all the way here. Maybe you're limiting your market by just niche, because only these people want to pay the money. But if you open it up a little bit more, you can get a lot more sales. So you have strong engagement, but weak monetization. People are all over you, but nobody's buying, okay? Because you're on the wish list. You're like, oh, maybe when I become rich, I'll buy from you. So, or the opposite too. You could be getting a lot of engagement. You could be charging nothing, and you could be monetizing on something, right? Typically it goes the other way. So if you have a pricing problem, what do? First, you research what is your customer paying for the alternative, not your direct competitor, but the alternative. Okay. Maybe they're using 3 softwares to get something done, and you can replace it with your one. How much are they paying for those 3, right? So how much does the alternative cost? And maybe it's not just a monetary cost. Maybe it's just a physical cost. It's the fact that they have to spend 15 minutes doing something they hate to do, and you can do it in 2, or right. So what is the current alternative, and what is it costing? Then you repackage your solution around the return on investment and the urgency that they have, because maybe you're just not communicating. It could just be a fact that you're not communicating your value enough. That's why you have only a few customers, because once they buy, they get really happy about it. But how do you get more customers to find out about it so they get happy too, right? Maybe they just don't know what it's like to be on the other side of being your customer. So then you test your pricing that you've changed in controlled cohorts. Being software, it's easier to do this. Being in retail is a little bit harder. We do our pricing tests on Amazon because it's easier for us to change the price there, and because we have so much traffic there, it shows pretty quickly. For example, last year, actually, I think this is the example. Yeah, we reduced our pricing last year from being we've always been a premium product, the best of all of our competitors, but we were priced sometimes 3 times more expensive than some of our competitors. Okay. And in the beginning, that worked for us while people were spending a lot of money on this, but now the economy is also in a bad spot. Okay. Just so you guys know too, right now is a hard time to start a business because the economy in both the US and Canada are bad. Geopolitically, the world is fighting with itself. So it's just a hard time. And we figured last year, after July, our sales came down hard, like 40% drop between August and October. And we were like, damn, this is not sustainable. If we keep selling these prices, the knockoffs, which there are many of our products, are going to start doing better. And they were doing better. So we decided to reduce all of our prices. Instead of being 300% more expensive, we're now 150 to 200% more expensive than our competitors. Which people are still happy to pay for because they're getting the brand, they're getting the customer support, they're getting the guarantee of a product that we give them, but they don't feel ripped off, right? So we reduced our prices. That's changed our economics a lot because now our cost of goods sold is higher. We have to hold on to more inventory. We're dealing with higher volume, less profit. We had to make some adjustments. And now we're at the stage where we actually bumped that price up just a little bit. And then we saw the effects. And we did a test a month ago. We bumped it up too much. Then we dropped it by $2. Now the pricing is again where it should be. So pricing testing, you have to be doing it almost constantly because the competition is going to change how much your customer wants to pay for you. New technology is going to change that, and you have to be adaptable, right? So pricing is almost one of those pivots you're going to have to do. And typically when we do it to retailers and distributors which buy from us in bulk, then we do the test on Amazon. If it works, we go and we pass the test down to them. We make a big announcement and everybody's aware of the new prices. People are used to prices changing once a year or so because it's just the economy and how it works. Okay, so you can almost plan for a pricing revenue model pivot every year, especially if you're in software. Because if you're in software, you have competition coming out every day, and those competitors are charging something else, and they're solving the problem. Now you have to adapt, right? So it's one of those that if you have a pricing pivot to happen, don't worry, you're in a good spot, because you have all of the other layers figured out. You just have to figure out what your pricing is. And let's not forget, we're pivoting to succeed. Again, pivots are not bad. Pivots are good. They're bad like just because they feel bad, and they should because you made a wrong assumption. Pivoting should never be, again, it should feel bad, but once you are committed to the pivot, it should feel good. For example, Bud Trainer's current sales and marketing pivot, we're feeling good about it because the previous one wasn't working. And then we stayed stubborn with it for a little bit and we're like, okay, it's really not going to work. We have to change. And then we accepted it. We admitted to the mistake, and then now we're pivoting, right? And now it feels good. It feels right. I'm motivated again, right? It's demotivating before you make the pivot because it's like, oh man, this sucks. I was wrong. I made the wrong decision. But once you make the pivot decision, then it should feel good. It should feel really good. It should feel like you're motivated again and ready to go. So a failed assumption is progress. And the more you fail, the more progress you make. Okay, because you find a way to not do it. And entrepreneurship is not so much about finding how to do it. It's about finding how not to do it and then being left with how to do it. Okay, the more how to not do it you find out, the more you're going to be likely to do it. Okay, startups win by not increasing, again, your right decisions, but by reducing the uncertainty, reducing the risk faster than your competitors. And for you to do that, you have to make more wrong assumptions, just as long as they're not costly, right? What's bad is making a bad assumption or a wrong assumption, spending a lot of money on it, and then you don't have a way to get that money back. Each pivot should make your customer profile more clear. It should make your positioning more clear. It should make the unit economics of your business more clear. So pivots, again, if they're going in the right direction, you're just chiseling your business, okay? You're not just kind of like slashing your business from this, from that, and then all of a sudden a new branch grows here, a new branch grows there. No, you're just pruning it. You're just making sure that it's nice and pretty. That's what pivots should be like. If you have to make a major pivot, let's say, for example, Netflix, right? They did a huge pivot when we started online streaming. They could have stayed with DVDs and delivering blockbuster style, but they didn't. They did a massive pivot. Why? What happened then? Well, their sales and marketing probably stopped working because they weren't getting more revenue. And they're like, okay, well, sales and marketing are decreasing. Why is that happening? It's not just a sales and marketing approach. So they go down to their customer profiles. No, customer profiles still the same people. Okay, and I'll go down to the solution. It's like, okay, maybe the solution is what's the problem here. We're delivering film via these physical devices. We need to deliver film a different way. The problem was still the same, that people wanted to watch film. It just changed how they do it. So the Netflix had to go down those layers, change the solution so they could go back up the layers again, right? So even a startup that is really, or a business that's really well positioned, that is killing it, might have to pivot just because the market changed, right? So you're always pivoting to succeed, and you should look at pivoting as a must-have, not as like, oh, I wish I don't have to, because it's always going to happen. Clarity always compounds, ego delays it. Like, look at Blockbuster not pivoting and what happened to them, right? There were some egotistical people in there that thought, oh, screw Netflix, they'll never win. We're Blockbuster. And there we go. Like, a blockbuster is even an expression that we use when a good new movie comes out, right? But those guys are out of business, which is kind of funny. It should be a Netflix, not a Blockbuster, when a good movie comes out. But that's what happens when ego delays it. BlackBerry is another great example, right? So they could have pivoted to match up with Apple, but they didn't, and they lost. And you didn't fail. Again, don't look at it as failure, look at it as a success. That's why if the pivot is too big that you have to make, that means it's already too late. Like you should have changed yesterday, okay? So you didn't fail. You're gonna fail if you don't change. Then you're gonna fail. Because the fact that you have to pivot, you didn't know. Now some evidence came to your face and you have to pivot. The fact that you didn't have the evidence is not your fault. You were going the right direction up until now. Now, if you continue going, you're going to go in the wrong direction. So it's not like you've been going the wrong direction all along. It's like, no, you went the right direction because that's what you knew. Now you have better evidence. And if you don't act on that evidence, now you're being wrong. And it's wrong decisions that kill a business, not the lack of right ones. Okay. Because if you're reducing risk, reducing mistakes along the way, you're going to have a successful business. And sometimes a mistake is to not take action, right? So if you need to pivot, take that action. Another kind of pivot that happens a lot that you could look as a pivot is having to fire people. Like we had to let go of a few people this last year, and it really sucked because we were so sure that we're the right people. We onboarded them, we made them part of the family for the company, and then all of a sudden they're not performing, they're not delivering anything. We have to let them go, and it sucks because we held them onto them for maybe another 2 months than we should have because we're like, no, we were right. They must be good. Let's give them another chance. Let's give them another chance. We didn't pivot fast enough, didn't fire them fast enough, and we ended up paying more for those lessons, right? So the quicker you realize you did something wrong, maybe just, have a drink, do whatever you need to do, go for a walk, and then come back and make the change, because it's not going to help if you continue persisting down a path that's going to get you down a cliff, or that's going to make you hit a wall. And that's it for today. Any questions? Aren't we supposed to be doing these steps at the validation stage of MVP before hitting the market, or do we hit the market as soon as we can build as we go along? So you can look at it as one of those things, Miriam, that yes, you have to do it before the MVP a lot, right? Because your MVP, your initial stages, you're making a bet. You're going to be wrong. You're going to have to pivot in the future, but you have to be right by a lot in order for your business to just pick up. Okay. It's kind of like trying to spark a fire. If there's no fuel there, you're just going to continue trying to spark and nothing's going to happen. Right. So yes, you're supposed to be doing all of these steps at the validation stage. However, we're going to be wrong about a lot of the assumptions that we make. So when we get that spark going and we get a little flame, now we think that the next step is to add all of these sticks, but we might find out that these sticks are not catching on fire because they're wet. Oh, we didn't know that sticks could get wet. We have to go look for dry sticks. And then you find the dry sticks and you start adding them. And then the fire gets a little bit bigger, right? And then now the wind blows and like, oh, I didn't know that there was wind here. And now you have to build some blocks around that. Now you're protected from the wind. The fire grows a little bit more. Oh, now we need thicker sticks. I didn't know that. I thought we could just keep putting little sticks on the fire, but you're out of little sticks because they burn too fast. So then you get bigger logs. And now the bigger logs are also wet. Oh, I didn't know that they could get wet. So can you see how we just don't know what we don't know? And as we go along, we learn new evidence that just brings that to light and like, oh, okay, that's how the world works. I didn't know. Now new evidence showed me. We can get new evidence by reading books, by talking to coaches and mentors, and just by sheer experience. Okay, those are the ones that teach us the best lessons. So to answer your questions, yes, we have to do it, but we have to continue doing it. Otherwise, you end up like Blockbuster, not like Netflix, right? Businesses that were doing millions, if not billions of dollars already, that one completely went out, the other one didn't, because one pivoted, the other one didn't. Does that answer?
Yes, thank you
Very
so
good.
much. Trial and error is okay, basically what I'm taking, right?
It is, yeah, very much so. Like my current startup, we're in the cannabis space, and that's a heavily regulated space. It's very hard to maintain, to get that momentum and stay there. The rules are changing everywhere, sometimes for the positive of cannabis legalization, sometimes against it. So our businesses, it's like riding a wave, right? You catch a wave, every wave is a different shape, every wave crashes differently, versus riding a skate park. The skate park is always there. You just have to go like this, right? And the concrete never moves. So for us, we've had to almost stay on startup mode the whole time, because if we don't, the market changes, we don't see the change, and then we crash. And we've had a lot of competitors, a lot of companies that are not even competitors, but just in their industry, go out of business or pretty much like lose a lot of revenue because they didn't adapt, right? So because the economy has been bad as well, we've had to adapt over and over and over to stay more lean. Otherwise, we start losing money. So it's also been a lesson in patience, having to understand that despite the best work that we do right now, it's a bad economy. People, when they don't have money, they don't have money. There's no marketing, there's no unique value proposition we can try to pitch to people. If they don't have money, they don't have money, right? So it's one of those where, in terms of timeline for my startup, every year you could say there's been like a decent pivot that we did, adapting to the market, adapting to the economical conditions, just getting the business ready. We're always thinking, because we want to have an exit, so we always think about leaving the business ready. If an investor came to us today, we probably wouldn't get the leverage that we want to get when we sell the business, but we want to be ready maybe in 2 to 5 years. So we're just preparing the business for that, right? So we do everything today for that future sale of the company. And for that, we have to stay very flexible with our approach to the market to understand where it's headed, because by the time the investor comes, they want to see it as a good position. They want to see us in a good position, not see us struggling or not reacting to the market the proper way.
Feel free to put any questions you have in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that as well.
Or anything that you've learned today as well that you'd like to share and how this applies to your startup.
I just wanted to just wanted to share a thank you here, because the pivot is exactly where I'm at, and you've opened up a lot of options for myself to dissect in the direction things are heading. Yeah, and we definitely miss the confidence of our economical change that we're all involved in particular with myself and aluminum in fabricating dock hinges. So, Eric, I very much appreciate where it's going, and thanks for allowing me to listen in.
My pleasure. Yeah, and if you're doing everything right, and it's just the economy that sucks, then you just have to be patient. It's like the weather is really bad outside, and you have this beautiful car you want to drive. It's like the weather is bad, you're not going to pull it out. So same thing with business right now. And the weather is just not good for business. There's very few businesses right now that are just lucky to be in the position they are, that have a lot of demand from the world because you're more essential. But it's kind of like COVID, like all the people wanted us to buy toilet paper. So it didn't matter how many dollars you put into marketing for selling other stuff. People wanted to buy toilet paper, and that's what they wanted, right? So right now we're in a bad economic spot as well. Americans have a lot less money to spend. That affects Canadians directly, and that affects the whole world. So it's one of those times where if you're doing everything right, look at your competitors, okay? If your competitors are growing and you're not, then maybe you should be doing something different. But if your competitors are doing just as poorly as you are, then maybe that means you're doing the right thing, and you just have to do as less bad than they are, and that's a win. So the way that we're looking at it this year, and I told my team, was if we don't shrink and we actually get even $1 worth of growth, that's great, because most businesses are shrinking this year, so that's kind of right. What we're taking up. You have to look at the reality of the situation as well.
Appreciate that. And yeah, stay confident, because hit them with the benefits they're going to get, and give it time. Thanks.
That's it.
So it's related to the previous questions as well. So basically starting has costs, right? Starting off has costs. No matter how many sets of skills you have from different industries, you end up needing hands on deck, you end up needing hiring people, right? And the revenue hasn't started yet at some times, and you have when marketing hasn't even started yet. What would you have as an advice for somebody in that very preliminary stage with regard to these like bills, not big bills, but they're still bills that you kind of need to take care of before you can actually start?
Yeah, it's tough. What I would suggest is look at the next 12 months and then come up with a scenario for like, okay, this is how much I want to afford to spend in the next 12 months, whether I win or not. Okay, so that's your cost for playing the game in the first place. So I'm willing to spend this much money per month for the next 12 months for a total of this much. If it goes $1 above that, that's where I'm saying no to it. Because if it fails, I want to fail with only this much money spent, right? When I started Bud Trainer, me and my buddy would put $5,000 each. So that was how much money I was setting myself up to lose if it didn't work out, right? So then you look at your cost, and you have to look at how many sales do you have to get over those 12 months in order to be positive by the end of the 12 months. And then you say, okay, I need to sell X amount of customers, 100. How many sales calls do I have to do to get 100, to do 1,000 or 2,000? So that's where you start getting the numbers for where you need to get. And then you can start your strategy going back from that. There is like burning money. It's your burn rate, right? So it's how much money do you have in the bank account? What's your burn rate? That gives you how many months of runway you have. And that's whenever startups go pitch to investors like, oh, I need $1 million to have 18 months of runway. So $1 million, they know they're not making money. They're going to lose that money over 18 months with the hope that they're going to get a result, right? That they're promising the investors. So that's kind of the way to look at it. It would have to be it's very case by case, Miriam, when it comes to your expenditures and your go-to-market.
And for somebody very, very fresh, would you recommend any resource on that particular topic? Any things you found helpful when you were, you already sound so much more informed than somebody's just starting off, right?
Well, when I just started off, which was 10 years ago, there was no ChatGPT. And if there was ChatGPT, I would have used it to coach me in so many more directions, right? So ChatGPT is really good for helping you with this type of decision making, and not knowing almost anything about your business. That's if this was our last interaction, that's what I recommend you go. We do coaching sessions as well with Innovation Cluster, and I don't know, in Magella, if the startups here, once they become a member of Innovation Cluster, they can book sessions with coaches such as myself, and then we spend a whole hour dissecting your business and going through that decision by decision.
Yeah, so I do want to start wrapping things up a little bit now because we are past 11 o'clock. I do have some resources I do want to share with folks. And so this is the perfect workshop for everybody. There was a lot of really great questions. And if you want to get deeper into validating and deciding whether or not to pivot, we have launched this Level Up Validate program, which goes through a 4-week program on the validation process where you get to pressure test your assumptions. And then at the end, you'll be able, with evidence, be able to make a decision of whether you're going in the right direction or need to pivot. And so I do want to share, you can scan the QR code to apply. I'll also put in the chat as well the application. I think Mariam, Elham, y'all asked very great questions, and it sounds like you're at the stage where you need this kind of programming. And so highly recommend that for sure. I also just want to thank everybody for attending today's workshop. We would love your feedback. We will be launching a poll here very quickly. And so perfect. So if you can fill out the poll for us, we really greatly appreciate all of your feedback. It helps us improve for future workshops. And so I will share as well, I will be sending an email later on this afternoon where you'll get access to the recording as well as a copy of the slide deck. And then Henrique, if you want to go on to the next slide. Perfect. If you love today's event, we have 2 more workshops coming up in the next few months. So March 17th, we have funding hacks. So all about funding. And then April 28th, we're hosting a scaling blueprint on how to scale your products, specifically focus on digital products. And so if you scan the QR code there, you can go to our events page and register for those. They're free workshops and would love to have you in attendance for those as well. And Henrique, you can go on to the next slide as well. If you found today's workshop super valuable, we would truly appreciate a Google review. So you can scan the QR code there to share your feedback, and it really means a lot to us. And so we greatly appreciate all your feedback and reviews as well. And just to wrap things up as well, if you're building a tech business, we would love to connect. Feel free to connect with us on our social medias. We at the Innovation Cluster are here to help founders like you grow with purpose. And so we'd love to see you at our upcoming events. We'd love to see applications for the Level Up Validate program. And we hope to have you continue to engage with us. Again, thank you for filling out the poll. There was one more question. Oh yes, that's a great question. In the email I'll send later as well, I'll include all the links that are in the QR codes if we went through things too quickly. So we'll share all that through email as well. Um, Perfect. Thanks again, everybody, and I hope you have a good rest of your day and happy Wednesday and take care, everybody.
It was a pleasure, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.